And so just a quick reminder, I think most everyone here knows who we are, but FIMC-VI is a statewide resource center for K-12 students who are visually impaired and enrolled in public school, private, charter, homeschool. We are located in Hillsborough County Public Schools. We are an Individuals with Disabilities Education Act funded state project maintained by BEES, or the Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services. Our vision is striving for access and success at the highest levels for all students with visual impairments, and our mission is to promote the success of students by providing high quality accessible instructional materials and providing professional learning opportunities like what we are doing here today. Our agenda for this morning, we did our welcome. We're doing primarily an overview of the annual census and student registration system that we have here for that process. We will have some updates from FIMC about upcoming events and whatnot. At the end, we will finish with an evaluation and in-service credit and adjourn by 10:30. Just a reminder, so this is part 2 of 3. So we already had our first session earlier in the school year. The third part of this series will take place on March 26th and primarily address end of year procedures, including returning items to FIMC-VI. For an overview of this session, so our goal today is that you will learn about what the annual census is, why we conduct the annual census, when we conduct the annual census, and how you complete the annual census. So we do also offer in-service and ACVREP credit for almost everything that we do at FIMC-VI. So the opening code that you want to take note of right now is student, and we'll share at the end how you can obtain a certificate to provide to your district or to the state in order to receive CEUs. Before we continue, I do want to ask a question, and you're going to respond by typing in the chat. How do you feel about completing the annual census? So type 1 for I'm ready to go, for or 2, I could use some more help, or 3, I'm starting at 0. So 1, I'm good. 2, I'm might be okay, but I need some more help. Or 3, I don't know. I need all the help I can get. Okay. We have a nice mix of folks here, so that's good. Some of you, this is a refresher. We've even got a smiley face. That's great. I'm glad somebody's happy about annual census. All right. Well, thank you all for letting me know where you are at. So what is the annual census? The annual census is an annual registration of eligible students that determines a per capita amount of money designated for the purchase of educational materials produced by the American Printing House for the Blind. These funds are credited to federal quota accounts across the country, which are maintained and administered by APH and its ex officio trustees. So every state and then different organizations with the state all have federal quota accounts, and those are all managed by ex officio trustees. This slide is showing a map of the United States. You see, again, this is national, everyone participating in this, and just across the whole country. I will point out, so in Florida, not all of the students, you'll see counts here. So each state, there's a number showing the number of students that were registered within that state and reported to APH in January of 2025. The number that you see for Florida, that is not just FIMC-VI, because we are not the only federal quota account that is in our state. The Florida School for the Deaf and the Blind, the Miami Lighthouse, and Division of Blind Services all have separate federal quota accounts. So they register students as well. And then those numbers are all combined with ours to come up with a number for Florida. I do want to point out here, though, this is something that we address with the vision contacts, but just for everyone to kind of keep in the back of your mind and tuck away, is that Florida, we are a pretty big state. We have a very large population, but our number of students that we report to APH for the annual census, which is very comparable to the number of students that are identified as having a visual impairment in Florida, is lower than several other states that actually have smaller overall student populations than we do. For example, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York. We actually do have more students in New York, and Massachusetts all report more students with visual impairments to the American Printing House for the Blind than Florida does. That's something that's been going on for as long as I've been at FIMC-VI. We've kind of tried to figure out why is that happening. We're not sure. But this is just a reminder to us too, to make sure we're identifying students, and that when you identify them, getting that parent consent to register the students with us or with whoever the primary service provider is, if it's FSDB or the Miami Lighthouse. So the American Printing House for the Blind is something that was created by Congress. So in 1879, the Congress of the United States passed the Act to promote the education of the blind. This act designates APH as the official supplier of educational materials to all students in the United States who meet the criteria set forth by APH and are working at less than college level. So I myself, as the project director at FIMC, am an ex officio trustee, and therefore I help to manage the federal HODA account fund that we receive. Why do we conduct an annual census each year? Well, if you're thinking about the fact that this is tied to money, so this allows Florida to participate in that federal act to promote the education of the blind. And as a result of this federally funded program, FIMC-VI is allocated quota fund based on the number of eligible students that are registered with us and then meet that criteria and are reported to APH. Then we receive those quota funds from APH that are used for ordering accessible materials from APH. So FIMC-VI, we receive funds for all the students that are identified as having a visual impairment. So I just said that a few moments ago, but again, all students should be registered with us if they're identified, regardless of their acuities or peripheral field. There are no cutoffs or criteria, things like that for the child visual impairment. It's just if they've been identified, then they're going to meet that APH criteria for the medical piece. So the American Printing House for the Blind Federal Quota Fund, we've been talking about that. FIMC-VI, we receive, and this number changes from year to year because the number of students that are registered and reported to APH changes. But last year, we received approximately $315 per student who met that criteria. We don't receive any APH funding for students who are registered and don't meet the criteria, but because APH expanded their criteria a few years ago, we are pretty much reporting everyone who is registered with us. The funds that we receive, our APH federal quota funds, are separate from the funds that we receive from the Florida Department of Education and used for equipment and textbooks that we provide. So this is a separate source of funding that we have. So the amount that we receive at FIMC-VI, you saw that map of the whole country. The amount is based on the number of students nationwide who receive the criteria, which is then allocated to the EOTs based on the number of students that they report to APH. And like I said, that number kind of changes. This year, we actually did get more money than we got last year. APH is constantly trying to make sure that the way they divvy out the money is fair to all of the accounts that they have across the country. Other reasons for the annual census. So as a reminder, only registered students with parent consent are eligible for APH products from FIMC-VI. So a student needs to be registered with us and you need that parent consent, and those are students that you can request APH products from us for. Otherwise, if you don't have that student registered with us, the district or local education agency is responsible for providing and or purchasing such material. Okay. However, once a student, so say when the student first comes into your district, they're not registered with us. Once you get that permission to register the student with us, you can start ordering materials. So the criteria for federal quota funds must include one of the following, and this is criteria that's set forth by APH, okay? So the student must either meet the definition of legal blindness, being 2200 or less, and the better eye with best correction, or a peripheral field of vision no greater than 20 degrees. So that's legal blindness, right? Then or they must function at the definition of blindness, visual performance reduced by brain injury or dysfunction, when visual function meets the definition of blindness as determined by an eye care specialist or neurologist. So for our purposes, we look at that as being cerebral, cortical, neurological visual impairment. And if they don't meet those two, the last criteria that they can fall under is meet the definition of visual impairment in IDEA. So any impairment in vision that, even with correction, adversely affects a child's educational performance. So that really, that's a newer criteria that was added, I think, 1 or 2 years ago. So that pretty much captures any students that don't meet the first two that are on this slide here. So essentially, if a student has an IEP, they're going to meet that third criteria if they don't meet the definition of legal blindness or the function at the definition of blindness criteria. So continuing on, so in addition to that first slide, the slide that we just looked at, the student must also be enrolled in a public or private nonprofit educational program of less than college level. Students in homeschool programs should meet Florida guidelines and/or procedures. The student must have a written educational plan. That's a very broad definition. It just needs to be a written plan. So you'll, when we get to the part about the information that you're updating for the student, you'll know that every possible option of educational plan is there, even just educational plan. So we should be able to capture any options there. The student must be enrolled with the registering school or agency on the first Monday in January. Only one school or agency can register a child with us. So if the child is in a private school, but they're also being served by an agency, then the private school is going to be the one that registers the child with us because they're the primary provider to that child. If it's the same thing, if it's a student that's in a public school and they're being served by an agency, the public school is going to be the one registering the child with us. You must have medical report information on file somewhere within that student's information, and you must have signed consent to share student information with APH for us to receive federal quota funds for that student. All right, I do see a question I'm going to address in the chat really quick before I continue. So, Danica, I'm happy you asked that because someone else asked that recently, and I got clarification from APH that yes, if the student has a 504 plan, they can be registered with us and counted. So please do register those students with us as well, and we can count them in the census as well. So we've covered APH eligibility, so now we're going to go over the process for completing annual census. Who completes the annual census? So generally, the Florida's EXC directors, they are automatically given that approval, not necessarily that they are the ones that are going to do this, but then we also have our vision contacts and our teachers of students with visual impairments. So these are the staff members that are typically involved in annual census. ESE directors should be aware of who their TVIs are and their vision contacts and who is approved for completing the annual census. And this is especially because annual census, a lot of the information is student identifiable information that's covered by FERPA, and even some of it is HIPAA related, right? So we just really have to be careful and make sure that only the people who should have access to that information are able to complete the annual census. All right, so before I move on, I have another question, and you can type your response in the chat. How often do you need to have the parental consent form signed to register students with FIMC-VI? And this is open-ended, so I'm not going to give you any ideas. Oh, look at that. Only one time, one. Okay, we do have some experts in the room. You are all correct. Okay, so let's take a look at some more information about signed parental consent. So yes, you only need to sign once as long as the student remains in your district or LEA. So if the student is in your district, but then they withdraw and they go somewhere else for a little while, and then they return to your district, you would need to get the consent form signed again at that point. But otherwise, as long as the student stays within your district, your organization, you don't need to have the consent form signed again. You're just going to keep it on file, and you don't need to send that consent form to us at FIMC-VI. For the consent forms, the district or LEA has the option of adding FIMC-VI and APH to existing consent forms if they are using things like that, or we have a consent form that we have created at FIMC-VI that's available in multiple languages. And you can find that by going to the forms page on our website. And there's a link which will take you to a folder that has that consent form. And I think there's Arabic, Russian, Ukrainian, Spanish. There's 10 different languages in there, I think. So hopefully what you need is in there. Students, and so this is something that I really want to emphasize because I think this is a little bit different from in the past, but students can be registered without consent with us. There is a question at the very top of our student registration form that asks about parent consent. You can register the student with us even if you don't have consent, but that student is not going to be counted during census, and you cannot order APH products for that student. Okay. If you register a student, you don't have parent consent, they're not going to be counted. But then if you get parent consent later, you can go back in and change that and indicate that you have parent consent now. And you might be wondering, well, why would I want to do that? You can still order textbooks for students with us if you don't have parent consent on file. Okay, because that's a different funding source. That's not APH. We won't report the student to APH or get any federal quota fund, but the textbook option is still there. So here's our timeline for annual census. This is pretty similar to the past, but there are some differences. So the first step, December 1st to the 30th of this year, ESE administrators, school administrators of charter or private schools should go in and just double check and verify their users within their organization to make sure that the correct people are in there and have approval or not approval if they shouldn't be in there. January 1st to the 31st, 2026. On the 1st, active students that are in our system, their status is all going to change to need info. At that point, then all of those students, the people, the staff that are in our system that can see those students, which you can see all the students in your organization now. It's not like in the past where you, well, that was annual census, but yes, you can see all of the students in your organization. Every single student needs to go in and you need to update, and especially their acuities, because we know that that information did not come over correctly from our previous system. So look very closely at the acuity section. I'll show you what your options look like for that now. Visual field, things like that. And there are questions that are brand new in this system, so there is no information that would have carried over. So you really want to carefully go through each student and all of the information, make sure it's correct. And once you submit that, the student status will change to pending. You can, during this window, January 1st to 31st, and even now, you can register new students with us. You add any new students that aren't already in the system, whether or not you have parent consent. We're going to be processing all of those student edits and student additions during this time period as well. So then step 3, February 1st to the 7th, the FIMC, we're going to go in and finalize all of the students that have been edited and added, but you will not be able to make any changes to students during that week. You will not be able to register any new students during that week. You'll be able to click on those things, like if you were going to edit a student, you'll be able to click, I'll show you the pencil icon that lets you edit, or the add student links, but everything will be grayed out. It won't let you actually do anything. Okay, and that just gives us the time to make sure everything's correct and let the dust settle, and then we'll open everything back up again, and then you can continue as usual. So step 1, updating FIMC-VI users by January 1st. So We really want to make sure that ESE administrators are verifying their list of users to make sure that only authorized users are able to update student records for annual census. So some reminders, we have our new FIMC-VI portal. I hope most, if not all of you, have been in our new portal, but we did launch that October 1st-ish. But so with this new portal, we are no longer using the staff authorization and removal form. Anyone who is new to the system, you're going to just register for an account, and then you're approved by your administrator or their delegate. And all of this was covered in a webinar that we did back when we launched the new portal, and that is recorded on the past events page of our website. We also have a whole user guide. Maybe Tiffany can post all of this in the chat. But just to expedite the process for annual census, we are suggesting strongly that new users register in the portal prior to January 1st, so you can be processed and approved. So once we get back from break, you're just ready to go and you're not waiting on being approved to get into the system to update students. The ESE administrator's responsibility, of course, is to update FIMC-VI users. We are going to send an email to the ESE administrators reminding them that annual census is beginning and to sign into the FIMC-VI portal, which you can find at the top menu of our website. That email will be sent on December 1st, so the day that we get back from break. Okay, so you might want to just remind your administrators too, if you have that open channel of communication there, to keep an eye out for this email. Once the ESE administrator signs in, they can go in and see the list of all of their staff that they have within their district or organization under user management. Who should manage the annual census? So for public schools, I kind of hinted at this, but so the ESE administrators are automatically authorized to register students. So these are like the top level people, they have that permission. Administrators of charter private agency sites are also authorized to register students. These administrators have the authority to approve other personnel, such as vision contacts, TBIs, etc., to register and update students. So each year it is the responsibility of those administrators to sign in to the portal to update their organization's user list. These administrators also have the option of assigning delegates, so people within their organizations or districts to also be able to approve people. That's something that we talked about in that webinar as well, and that's also covered in our user guide. So this might be a good time if your administrator hasn't been in the system yet, to share this information with them so they know that they could, because we know they're very busy, they could assign that role, make somebody else in their district a delegate, so that someone else that they trust and who knows who the people are could go in and do that as well. And so overall, this process is our way of ensuring that only people who are authorized are able to access all of the student identifiable information that's in our system. What if a user is missing or I don't recognize someone on the list? So this is a question that an administrator might ask, or if the delegate is helping them out. It is important to verify the status of those people before they are approved. So there may be staff from charter schools or other departments that are serving students with visual impairments, or there may be students who are being served through a 504 plan. The charter schools, we are in our new system, we're trying to separate them out to be not included within districts to kind of manage that better, but there are still likely charter schools that are within districts. So this is definitely something to keep an eye on and make sure that if you don't recognize someone, that they might be with a charter school. If you are a new user, as I mentioned previously, they must register for an account and be approved by the administrator or their delegate. And we do recommend, because especially if it's a larger district, those administrators may not know who all of the staff are, that the vision contact or a TBI work with those administrators in updating and approving users. The site does give the option of sharing the list of users, okay? So on the page, and I'll show you what this looks like. but the administrator can export a list of the users that are on that page for their district or LEA and share this with whoever they would like, who knows who those staff might be, to verify their status. And so at the top of the page, and I'll show you, there's an export user link. And when you open the spreadsheet, you could email it as an Excel spreadsheet or save it as a PDF, however, and email it to other staff just to help facilitate that process. So if you haven't seen it yet, this is what the landing page of our FIMC-VI portal looks like. The web address is portal.fimcvi.org. I think it works better if you put www at the front of that, but it's also linked on this slide as well. And as I mentioned, you can reach this by selecting the FIMC-VI portal option in the top menu of our website. So after the administrator signs in, and you'll see here there's also a register button on the left. But so if you're new, that's where you're going to select to register. But if you already have an account, you're going to sign in. And this view is only what administrators can see, okay? The user management tile. If you're a TVI, if you're not a delegate, you're not going to see the user management tile. This is just something that administrators and delegates can see. But those individuals will scroll down and select that user management tile to see the list of users in the organization. And so this is something that's really important. I think if there's one thing that you take away from this webinar that's going to be helpful across the board for whatever you're doing in the FIMC-VI portal, is to always, when you're on a page doing something, trying to find a person, trying to find something that you want to order, to always start with the clear button at the top of the page and then just click on the search. That helps remove any of the filters that might be at the top of the page, because each section of the portal has its own kind of filters and search fields that you can use. But we're just finding that it's a little bit of a ticky platform. We're just making sure that if everything cleared out, that ensures that whatever you're looking for actually appears. So to see the list of everyone that is in your organization, if you're an administrator or a delegate, you're going to select that clear button and then the search button, and then below at the bottom of the page will be the search results. So beneath the search results, then the people will appear, and to the right, you'll see that there's a field, the approval status field, and the options there in the dropdown are pending, approved, and not approved. And so any users with a pending approval status must be approved before they can log into the FIMC-VI portal. Okay, so if you've registered and you're still sitting there waiting, then you're showing as pending when the administrator goes in and sees your account here. So what the administrator needs to do is click on that drop-down field and change the user status. So if the administrator knows that, yes, this is someone who should have access to our organization, they're going to click in there and they're going to change the status to approved. If they don't recognize the user, let's say somebody just inadvertently, like they picked the wrong district or whatever the case may be, if it's someone who should not have access under your district or organization, you can change the status to not approved. Or if you need to verify the information with the vision contact or whoever else in your district prior to approving somebody, just leave that person as pending. But once the status is changed to approved or not approved, you must select the save button at the top of this table here to save those changes. So you change the status, you can change the status of multiple people at a time, but before you navigate away from this page, you need to select the save button at the top of the table. Okay, otherwise those changes aren't going to hold. So that's that process, but just a reminder too, though, that even if you are not, if you don't register and you're not approved prior to January 1st, even after January 1st, people can still register and be approved. That just might slow down the process for getting in to update students. So this is where you can see the export user list link. This is at the bottom of that same page that I was just showing you. So you have your, at the top of this would be the all of those search filters, and then you have your search results, and you see where the approval statuses are. And right above that save button is the link for export users. So when you click on that link, that is what creates an Excel spreadsheet of everything that is in the search results. Step 2, all student records must be updated by January 31st. So let's do a pop quiz before I do anything else here. Which students are included in the annual census? And you can type in the chat what your answer, 1, 2, or 3. 1 being only students who are legally blind. 2, only students who have a primary disability of visual impairment. Or 3, all students who have been identified as having a visual impairment. Okay, we've got some solid, knowledgeable people here. So I hope you all are ready to go back and train your team on this too, because you all definitely know how this goes. Okay. So yes, you're all correct. Kiss your brains. So the FIMC-VI user responsibility of updating student records on the first Monday in January. So when you get back from break, you sign in. All students, and actually this will happen before you get back from break, all students will be reset to a need info status. So if the student is in our system and they are active, they will be set to need info. At this time, the users, typically vision contacts and TVI, should begin to update current student records and enter any new records for the annual census. So when you go in, you're going to click on the pencil icon to the right to open the record of each student for which you are responsible. Or if your district is one where there's one person who does this for everyone, however your district does this is just the process to follow, but you just need to make sure that every single student in your district is updated however that is being done. But once a student record is updated and submitted, the student status will change to pending. When a student edit is processed by FIMC-VI, the status will then be changed to approved. Any duplicate students, so we'll be processing students as you're doing the work on your end. And if we identify any duplicate students, we will verify those and delete them as needed. If you make an edit to a student and then we at FIMC-VI approve it, you can still go back and make changes, but then the student is going to revert back to pending. Okay, so just be mindful of that you can, if you realize you made a mistake, you forgot to do something, you can still go back and make the changes even if we've already approved the student, but then they will go back to pending. So you'll have to wait for us to process that new change that was made. So one issue with this is when in this new system, the students will only appear in a drop-down to order textbooks for that student. And at this point, you will be ordering APH products in this system, okay? And I maybe should have said that already, but December 15th is our goal for adding APH products, loan library, and Braille writers into this new system, into the portal. And for APH and Braillers, you have to select the student. And also for textbooks, you have to select a student, but a student will only appear in that list to order the item for if they are in an approved status. Okay, so that means that if a student is in needs info status and pending status, they are not going to appear in the dropdown for you to order an item for that student. So if you're in that situation, like I really need to get this order in, because the student's not showing and there's still needs info or pending. And if there needs info, then you still want to go in and make your changes. But especially if they're in pending status and you're waiting on us to approve the student, please contact Tiffany Conrad and we'll get that process expedited. So we can go in and approve the student so you can then request items for that student. What do
And
you
so
got, Tiffany?
yeah, just I'm gonna put my contact information in the chat, but just to clarify, so this is that time period in January when census is open and students are in that pending or need info status, right?
Mhm.
Where they wouldn't necessarily, if you need to order something and they're in one of those statuses, that you would need to contact me to have that status changed
Mhm.
so that you can continue to order things for them.
Yeah, but please do make sure that before you
Mhm.
contact us, that if the student is in needs info, please do go ahead and make those changes to the student to get the student independent, because otherwise, if we go in and process the student, we may lose track of the fact that the student hasn't actually been updated yet. Okay. So we want to make sure the student is updated before we approve the student. All
Good point.
right.
Yes.
Yes. Um, so all right, I've got a private question here about resetting. Okay. So use
I'm working on that.
Okay. Joanna, teacher materials in the loan library. So the loan library is going to be in this new system, but you won't have to select a student to request those materials. All you're going to be doing is selecting the shipping location. Okay, so that is different because we recognize that's just not something that's always tied to a student. So that will be a separate process. The things that need to be updated for census is pretty much everything. You want to look at all the things that are in there because things might have come over incorrectly from the previous system or things might have changed for the student. So we really do ask that you go through and double check everything that's in there. So the first thing, parent consent. So if the parent revokes consent, that's happened. We've had parents say that they signed consent before, but they don't want to provide it anymore. That can be unchecked. Or if the student was in there and that's not checked and you do have consent on file, checking that off, confirming medical report information that you have, updating the student's name, date of birth, things like that if necessary, the reading media of the student, their grade levels, the type of written plan that they have, their primary instructional language, whether or not this is new, whether or not they're registered with the Florida Low Vision Initiative, information about dual sensory impairment, updated eye medical acuities. So this is definitely one you really need to verify this for all students because this is the primary part that helps us determine which of those criteria the student is going to fall under, whether they're going to meet the definition of blindness, function at the definition of blindness, or be quote unquote an IDEA student. Especially because there is a possibility that APH may kind of change the funding amount depending on which of those categories that the student falls into. They aren't doing that right now, but that is always something that could happen. So we really want to make sure that information is accurate. Looking at any restricted visual field information and updating a student if needed, if let's say the student is no longer in your district. So when you sign in as either a teacher or district personnel or an administrator or even paraprofessional, so we do have specific roles of people who are allowed to manage students, register students, and do annual census. So if you're one of those people, so general education teachers, a public school principal, a PT, and OT, these are people who will be able to get into our system to request loan library materials when we get to that point, but they do not get to see student management. They can't, we're not giving them that approval. Okay. But so those of you who do have this, which I feel like I see lots of TBIs on here, so you all are going to scroll down and you're going to see student management and you're going to select that. And again, so remember, use that clear button and then the search button. That will show all of the students in your entire list across your entire organization or district that you are in. Okay, so make sure you start there. And so updating active students, there's a couple different scenarios that we're going to look at here, but so we'll start with updating the students that are already in your system. So this is similar to what we just looked at for the list of the users, or the list of staff that are there. So you're gonna click on that clear in that search button, and then under the search results, you're gonna see all of the students. And here you'll notice that they all have an approval status of need info. So at this point, we have quote unquote opened annual census, so that automatically triggered this mass change. So that means everybody needs to go and click on that pencil icon that you see highlighted here and go in and make any edits needed for each student. Okay, and then once you do that and you submit it, then this approval status will change to pending. So this is, we're going to go through all of the different sections that are on the student. Well, this is like the register student page, but it's the same information whether you're registering a student or editing a student, the page looks the same. At the very top is the information about eligibility and consent. So make any changes there as needed. The next question is about the presence of a neurological visual impairment. So update that as needed for a student. If you answer yes to this question, just as an aside, you will not have to provide acuities or peripheral field information for the student, because at this point we're saying we have all that we need to know that this student functions at the definition of blindness. They're meeting that criteria that APH has. So
Liz,
make that
can,
change yes.
can I point out, Liz, that on the last slide, that at any point, if you initially mark a student that they don't have parental consent, that upper box is where you can change at any point. If you collect parental consent, you can go back and update that and say, I've now gotten parental consent and they meet the criteria.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can change everything on this entire page at
Yep.
any time except for between February 1st and February 7th. So outside of those dates in the entire calendar year, you can go in and change anything that you need to for any student, as
Yep.
long as they're in your system. Okay. So then we have, after that, the student's name. The middle name is optional. That can be helpful, especially if the student is a twin or a triplet or things like that, but update that as necessary. Next, we have the student's date of birth. That might need to be fixed. We have, I think, come across some of those sometimes where the date of birth seems a little questionable based on the grade level, which then leads me into the student grade level here. The grade levels that are shown are provided by APH. So this is something, and most of the questions that are part of this student registration in the annual census are questions that it's information that APH asked for, and they're the ones determining the definitions and the criteria that you're going to use. Okay, so the definitions of all of the grade levels are built into the form itself. So they're on the slide, but if you forget, they're right there within the form. So if you need a reminder, just look under the grade level field when you're on that page. But as a reminder here, IP is for infants. Those are children of preschool age served by infant program, birth to age 3. Pre-kindergarten and preschool students, or PS, are children of preschool age served by preschool programs. Kindergarten students are those enrolled in kindergarten classes. Grades 1 through 11 are students of school age as determined by state law, and regular academic grades 1 through 11. So you select whatever grade the child is in. Grade 12 is for students who are in grade 12 or are continuing to receive special education services under IDEA until the student turns age 22. So then this last one is probably the tricky one. So adult students, we do have adult students, but you want to make sure that you're following the correct criteria. So these are students who are ages 22 and older as of the first Monday in January. So they might still be in school, they might still be grade 12, but if they are 22 or older as of the first Monday in January, then they need to be reported as adults. Okay. And so they should have received at least 120 hours of educational instruction during the preceding calendar year, which we know that if you're in our system, then you're meeting that criteria. So that's the grade level. And then the system has within here, after the date of birth and grade level, it just kind of does a little check to make sure that those two make sense, that it sort of matches up. And if they don't, then you're just going to get this little message that asks you to certify that the grade level and the age are correct. If they're not correct, go back and fix them or check the box so that you can move on. The written plan question, I don't have the whole drop down showing here, but this has IFSP on it, IEP, services plan, 504 plan, um, written plan. I think there's one more that I'm forgetting about, but they're just select whichever one that applies. And if you feel like none of them do, then just select written educational plan. Or district. So this one, it depends on what type of organization that you're in. If you are in a public, or if this is a public or charter school student that this is for, the district is going to be automatically populated and grayed out. So you won't be able to change anything, you won't be able to touch it. But if you're in there and you're like, that's not the right district, then you might want to double check the account that you're signed in under. Maybe somehow the student. But yeah, if that's obviously not right for a public or charter school student, reach out to us and we'll try to see what's going on there. So the difference here is if this is a student that is in a private agency or homeschool student, for those students, the district field is not going to be populated. For if it's a student, yeah, there's probably a good number of students right now where that is not, there's nothing selected here. But at census time, you do need to select something because the system is not going to let you submit this page unless you select something in the district field. So for these students who are enrolled in private schools, or they're primarily being served by an agency, or they are homeschool students, you're going to select the county that the student resides in. Okay, so where does that student live? For the distance visual acuity left and right fields, there are two here. The big change is that this is just a drop down now. It is not an open text box where you are typing whatever information you have. So you are selecting one of these options for distance visual acuity left and then for distance visual acuity right. So you're going to need to go in and double check this for every student in your organization to make sure this is correct because we know that it's not correct for most students. So your options are between 2020 and 2199, 2200 and above, for example, 2400, 2600, or maybe anosmia, NLP, CF, count fingers, object perception, light perception, hand motion, other similar provided only. You can select that. Or if you have none of this and it's just no acuities provided, you're going to select that. So select whichever one of these best matches what you have on hand. And I did say, you need to have that. This should be coming from a medical report, but you don't need to have the actual medical report. Just somewhere in that child's file, at the very least, there should just be a statement, maybe in a FBLMA or on the IEP somewhere, just that according to this report, the child has 2200 acuity in the left and the right eye, something like that. Okay.
And hey, Liz, there's a question in the chat regarding the time frame for that information.
Okay. So there is no time frame for medical for the eye medical information. APH did have a cutoff, but they did away with that, I think, like around COVID, and it was kind of not sure if they're going to bring it back or not, but I don't think they're ever bringing any kind of cutoff back. So the information can be however old, just whatever you have on hand. And I think too, just to like keep in mind that this is separate from eligibility for visual impairment. So like we've got our whole APH quota thing happening here, but this has nothing to do with eligibility requirements related to iMedical reports and information for initial eligibility and reevaluation. So kind of like think of those as two separate things in your head.
There's one more question regarding acuity. Can fix and follow be recorded as an acuity when the medical provider uses that?
For fix and follow, I would select no acuities provided. That would be the best one to use.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. For peripheral field, this is similar, pretty much the same as what we had last time, but you do have to select not applicable if the child does not have peripheral field loss degrees reported of 20 degrees or less on the report. So this needs to be very specifically stated that the child has, 13 degrees or 10, whatever it is. But if it's not specifically stated like that, then you're going to change it to not applicable. So you do have to select something here. But if you're selecting degrees, make sure that it's coming from that medical report information. Education facility type is the next question. So here you're going to select whatever the child is getting, where they're enrolled. So if this is a child in a public school, you're selecting public. If they're in a charter school or LEA, you're selecting charter. If they're in a private school, okay, so where is the student enrolled and where are they receiving primary instruction? Then we have a section here on additional services. So we do have a new question asking if the student is registered with the Florida Low Vision Initiative, and there's a link to their live binder. So here you're just answering yes or no for that. And then the next question is if the student has a dual sensory impairment. If you answer yes to that, then there's going to be a question that appears asking if the student is registered with the Florida and Virgin Islands Deafblind Collaborative. So this is our annual census. This is for students with visual impairment. There's also a child count that happens with the deaf-blind side of things, okay? And Bobby is the one that you work with for that. So you want to make sure that any students that are dual sensory impaired, deaf-blind, that they're also set up with Bobby as well for that child count and also to receive services from them because they have a lot of free things that they can provide, different resources and whatnot. So make sure that students are being connected with them as well. The next section is reading medium. So this is something that is specific to APH. This is information they ask for and they provide these definitions. So all students in infant and preschool programs are being reported as pre-readers. Non-reader was an option in the past, but the new category, this is several years old now, so hopefully everyone's on board with this, but the newest category is symbolic reader, and the definition provided by APH is that a symbolic reader is one that accesses printed materials with tangible 2 or 3-dimensional symbols. Examples are photographs, line pictures, real objects, miniature objects, partial objects, etc. And these symbols may or may not have braille or print attached, but the student needs the additional symbol to access the learning material. So that definition, I believe, is that on the, yeah, that's on the website there as well. So you can refer to those when you're making those selections. So you have to select a primary reading medium. So you have your choices of auditory, braille, pre-readers, symbolic readers, or visual readers. And then the secondary and other can be not applicable. And the system automatically, whatever you pick for the first one, it automatically takes that away from the secondary and other. So there's no possibility of you duplicating the secondary and other. So you can select something for those. Otherwise, you can select not applicable for secondary and other. For the language section, what you're selecting here is the language that is most commonly used in instructional materials for the student. So the choices are English, Spanish, other, and I think there might be a not applicable. But APH is using this information to project demand for Spanish or other language materials in Braille and large print. So this is an APH question. They're not asking if, what the language that the child uses in their home or maybe their primary language that they do use, but it's what is used in the instructional materials for the student. just for them to kind of have numbers for their future product development and availability. At the bottom of the page, after you've answered all of those questions, I will say, so actually before the very bottom of the page, there is a note to FIMC-VI field that's optional. This is especially helpful, I mentioned before, with the twins and triplets, you know, the students that have very similar names and the same date of birth, just to help us make sure, like, you didn't accidentally register the same student twice with a very minor difference. So that note field is there for that, or just anything else that you would like us to be aware of. And then you do have to check that box certifying that everything is correct, and then you're going to submit it to us. And so, as I said, once you do that submit, now the student is in pending status until we go and approve the student and update what we need to, and then the student is in approved status.
I will say also, Liz, that sometimes we're using that box, the notes to FIMC. Sometimes we use that. So if you see a student that shows up in your list as needs info just throughout the year, sometimes you'll find a little note from us in the note to FIMC. Sometimes it's a note from FIMC.
To ourselves, yes.
Yes, to ourselves and to you as to why we're sending that student to you for needs info. Sometimes it's, you know, student registered in another Florida district, or, you know, and we're wanting for you to confirm that the student is no longer there with you. So sometimes you'll find special little happy notes from us in that box to you.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
good reminder. So then you also, so you're going through and you're updating the students that need info, but maybe there are students that are no longer in your district that need to be made inactive for your district or organization. You can do this at any time. You don't have to wait till census to do this, but you definitely want to do this at census if it hasn't been done yet. Okay. So inactive students is very easy. You're on that same page. You click on that pencil icon, and when you scroll down, it's right after the reading medium field. There's a student status field, and there's multiple options in there. I'm sorry. So the student status field, hold on. There is the student will say active, but you're going to click in the drop down and change the student to inactive. When you do that, the student inactive reason field will appear, and that's where you're going to select the reason why the student is inactive. So they moved, they withdrew, they graduated, there's all different options in there that should address any possible scenario. So select whichever one best applies, check that box that is correct, and submit it to us, and then we'll go in and we'll make the student inactive and deleted so that then they will no longer appear in your list of students. And here's a slide showing changing that student inactive reason. So then the other thing might be that there's you have your whole list and there are students that are not on the list that need to be there. Okay. You can always add new students to the portal. Like I think we said this a few times, but just to reiterate, anytime throughout the school year, with the exception of between February 1st and 7th, you can go in and add new students. Even if you know that maybe you know, or you're kind of sure that a student that came to you is already in our system because they were in a different district, you still need to register the student with us because we need the information from you, the most current, to make sure it's all correct, and then we'll double check with the old location if the student was already in our system. So you don't need to double check and make sure whether the student was registered with us previously by somebody else prior to registering the student with us. Just go ahead and register the student. I'm going to add a caveat to that in a few slides though. So as I was saying, what if a student is not showing up under your organization? So I think I pointed this out, but there is an add student link that is on the page where that brings up that same register student form and you complete all of the information when the new student registration form. And when you do that, the student will be in a pending status. So then when we at FIMC process everything and we approve and verify all the information, then the student status will be updated to approved. And as I said, February 1st through the 7th, and this is our goal is to stick to these same dates every year. So February 1st to the 7th, even in 2027, 28, heaven help me getting into the 30s. That should be the time period where you're not registering students, you're not editing students, but outside of that, you're golden, okay? Just a reminder too, though, those students, you will not be able to order materials for them until we approve the student and the student is in the approved status. So on this slide, this is showing you where when you were on that student management page, which you got to by clicking on that student management tile, there is an add student link at the top of the search area where all of those search filters are. So you click on that and that opened the same page that had all the information that you're updating at annual census time to edit the student. There will be nothing there. Everything will be blank. So you will have to populate all of that. So reminders for annual census. So you're updating students between January 1st to the 31st. Throughout this time period, ESE administrators can go back into the system to make sure, students are being updated, monitor that progress, check in with teachers if necessary. And if you have questions throughout this process, you can contact Tiffany. You can contact me as well. I am more than happy to help too. But we do suggest that once you have updated if your district is one where each teacher is kind of responsible for their own group of students, that once you have updated all of the students for whom you're responsible, that you let your administrator know just so they're aware that, people are going through the process. So then once everyone is done and we're in that February 1st through the 7th time frame, like I said, we're going in and we're double checking to make sure everything's complete. We make sure there are no duplicates. And then we send the information to the American Printing House for the blind. And then at that point, all of the students across the entire country are all dumped into the same database together to make sure that there are no duplicate students, because that has happened where a student moved here from another state. So they're registered with us and they're still registered with the previous state. So then I have to talk to that person in that state and be like, hey, like I checked with the TBI here, like they said that student is here. So you need to give that student up so we can get credit for that student and get the quota fund there. So that does happen, or there are students with wildly similar names and dates of birth, but they're not the same. So that's kind of interesting, but that is the whole process to make sure that no student is being counted more than once. So just to review again, and this is going to seem so redundant, but like I said, I feel like this is like one of the most important takeaways from this process to make sure that when you are going through your list to see the students and before you register any new students with us, or to make sure, like let's say it's a student that's been in your district, and you're like, well, I don't know if they're already registered with us or not, to just double check that before you register the child, because somebody might have already registered them before last year or whenever, and they're already in the system. So to see all the students in your district and not use any filters, especially for census, and to see all the students regardless of their status, you're on that student management page and you're selecting the clear button and then the search button. Okay, so that will show every student regardless of who they were registered by, as long as they are within your district or organization. And then you'll see that approval status down at the bottom of the page. We have some students that are pending. We have a student that is need info. All right. So that's where to start if you want to check and see if a student is in your district or not. And what you can do too here, and I might show you all this, I think we'll have time, but once you do this, if you have a ton of students in your district, you can there's a search field for the student's name, but it's best to use as little information as possible if you're searching for a student, because the more information you put in there, the more likely that it's not going to match exactly and you're not going to get a result. So what I always do is I just search by the student's first name or the student's last name after I've selected the clear button to make sure there's no other filters. I'm just using first name or last name. The student's not there, then they're not there. Okay. So that's that, seeing all the students for this process of annual census and making sure that you are processing every student that is in need info status, it might be helpful to do that clear button and then change the student approval status drop-down box to need info and then selecting the search button. So that way you know that you're seeing all of the students that still need to be updated by somebody in your district or organization. All right. So clear button, changes approval status field to need info, and then click on search and just work your way down that list.
I think something that's also fun, like when you've cleared and you have your big list of all of your students, those subheadings that are in the search results, you can sort by the names so that you can have a nice alphabetical listing of the students so you can really see clearly what students are there. So you can look for, you know, that Sue Glazer student you've been searching for, or, and it's in nice alphabetical order. So you can search easily by clicking on any of those titles across the top.
Yes, yes. Okay. All right. So frequently asked questions. Can the ESE director or administrator approve new FIMC users after January 1st? Yes. So hopefully you've caught that so far that, yeah, all of these things can be done throughout the year at any time. But if no other individuals are approved within a district or organization, that administrator is going to be the only person responsible and even able to complete the annual census. So we don't want to see that happen. What happens if you don't complete student updates by January 31st? So students who are not updated or added cannot be reported to APH and will not generate federal funds. And if that student needs APH materials, those materials must be purchased by the district or LEA. So if they're not in here, you can't request materials for them, okay? What happens if the student's medical exam date is more than 3 years old or however old? Those students can still be registered with FIMC because the criteria that we're using is the APH criteria, and they do not have any cutoff dates for the medical report information. So last reminder here to be sure that all students in your district, or if you're in a private school or charter school, that all of those students who are identified as having a visual impairment are registered with us. With the exception, of course, of the students, if they're at the Florida School for the Deaf and the Blind, they're being registered there. If they're Miami Lighthouse, they're registered there. And then Division of Blind Services has like a small group of adult students that they register separately as well. Okay. So Tiffany, do you feel like I have I know we want to go over the update slide, but do you
Oh
feel
yeah,
like
that's fine. I think you
okay.
have time.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to go over to find my Zoom menu bar again.
Colleen put a nice, while you're pulling that up, put a good reminder for us all, similar to that clear your filters reminder. Something else we've all noticed is that the system as a security function does time you out and require you to re-sign in just to keep all of that. We have a lot of student information in this system. And so sometimes you'll go to search and like nothing will come up and you'll be like, wait a minute, I know I have teachers in here and I know I have students in here and that just doesn't seem right. And that's because it's not right. It's because you've timed out. So if something isn't working right, it's because you've timed out and you need to just click the sign out as Liz is showing now and just re-sign back in and start fresh. So that does happen pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, the system, and it's not always obvious right away. But so I tend to, if I haven't been in the site for like 5 minutes and I come back to it, I just sign out and I sign back in.
Yeah.
This is not the live site, okay? So don't panic and think, well, I'm not seeing APH, I'm not seeing Loan Library, I'm not seeing Braille. This will say Braille errors. We know Braille machines is not correct. We've got to have that fixed. But this is not live. This is the development site, okay? So we're ignoring all of that, but I am signed in right now as a TBI, okay? So for census, I'm coming down here, I'm going to student management, and I can see right now it says current census status, census open. open. Okay, so we're pretending that it's January 8th right now. And so I want to see my students. I really want to make sure I see all the students that I need to though. So I'm doing clear and then I'm doing search. And I come down and all right, they're all there. And you see that these are all needs info, right? So that whole thing happened where they've all been reset. So I'm clicking on the pencil and I'm not going to do this now, but I'm going to be like checking everything to make sure it's all correct. And then I'm going to click the box and select submit. And then the student is going to change to pending. Okay. And then once FIMC approves that student, they will be an approved status. So I'm on another page. I'm going to change really quick the census status so you all can see what it looks like when we are in FIMC admin review. That's what that step of the process is called. So I just need to get into the admin side of things really quick and change that. I'm going to refresh this page. And so now you see it says Census FIMC admin review. And you might also notice it automatically changed one of these search filter things up here. So now I'm not getting anything. Well, that's not good. So I'm going to do clear again, search again. Oh, thank goodness. There's the students. All right. Everything's fine. So right now it's not obvious that I can't do anything, but if I click on the edit, the pencil icon, everything is grayed out. I can't touch anything. Okay. So this is what's going to happen February 1st through the 7th. If I click on the add student, it's the same thing. It's not going to let me do anything. Okay. And then if I come over to the admin side and I just ended census, then over here, you're going to see census end. And this is what it's going to look like year round, like in March, it's going to be here and it's going to say census end and you're just going to ignore it. But
Majority of the year is the census end.
yeah, because nothing's happening. We're all just doing business as usual. These
Right.
statuses are all still the same because I didn't approve anybody yet, but now you can still go back and do business as usual. Okay. All right.
So there's a question,
Yeah.
Liz, about should charter schools register their own students? Or should I register homeschool students? Do I just need to obtain consent from them to count them for census?
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get charter schools separate. So if you could let us know who like this this charter school and we work with that administration to get them set up so they are like a separate account and then get those students into the charter school. So if you could email me and Tiffany separately and let us know, um, let me show you something in relation to that in a moment here, but yeah, and we'll get that worked out. For homeschool students, we are expecting the homeschool parent to be in our system and they're the ones that go in and manage the student, but they can work with the TBI, like if they need help, knowing what to order and all that kind of stuff. We do though expect the homeschool parent to be the one. So that's going to be another one where you're going to need to kind of help us get that connection so we can get that set up correctly. So what I want to point out, right?
They would withdraw them though, right, Liz? Like once
Yes, yeah, you would
they would be
withdraw this.
separate accounts.
Yeah, you would make the student inactive and withdraw them. And then the homeschool parent, the charter school people, they would register the child and everything would get moved over. I wanted to point out too, so this is on the student management page. So right next to the name field is the student ID field. This is the FIMC student ID that in the past you had to, well, right now you're using this for APH orders and you had to know this number to order text with. Once APH is in here, the only reason that you need this number, because you don't need to put in a number when you are assigning orders to a student, you're picking the student name from a drop-down list. So what this number is for now is for when you need to communicate with us about a student, about their registration information, about orders for that student. So instead of using Taffy Anderson in the email, you're going to say, hi, I have a question about student 13644. Student 13644 needs to like go to this school or like whatever it is, but so that way we're not using student identifiable information and emails. Okay. So we're still using that number, but that's the only reason that you'll need to use that once APH and all that good stuff is in here. All right.
Another question in the chat, do we need to wait till January 1st to start updating and editing students, or can we start now?
I would go ahead and start now, but I will say that in census, the student is still going to be changed back to need info, but all that means that at census time, if you know, like this student, I already updated them, you're just gonna scroll down and check the box and submit them. So you would want to have some way of keeping track of which students you have actually updated, if that makes sense, okay? Because we really need to make sure, especially those acuities, that all of that information is correct. But yeah, if you
Their
want to start
grades have been
now,
updated and
yeah,
their
their grades are
acuity.
likely different. Yes. Yeah. So you can start working on it now, but either way, they're still going to go to needs info and you're still going to have to go in and check the box and submit. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Nothing else in the chat right now.
Okay. So slide deck again. And so that's everything that we have to cover related to annual census. The email will go to the administrators on December 1st. Please email me and Tiffany any other questions that come up between now and or whenever, any other questions that come up about anything that we talked about, but be sure to share the information with your team. So now
Yeah.
we'll let Tiffany share some updates
Yeah,
from
I think,
FIMC.
probably something we don't have on here that is related to what we're talking about now is we will have another training coming out in December, sort of
Mm-hmm.
an additional training related to more portal features so that, APH products and loan library and braillers will be added in December. And so be on the lookout for that to be added in a training around mid-December. So that's not on here. The date will be posted and we'll send something out soon. But we have so much coming up, so many exciting things. So right after break, we'll have our statewide assessment update. So this is an important one. Our assessment team works hard to make sure that they're gathering anything related to our students with visual impairments and Florida statewide assessments. And so they've gathered all that information up for us and put it all together in a nice, neat little package for a training on January 6th. So make sure if you can attend that or have someone from your team attend that, it will be recorded, but that will be January 6th, right after break. Also, we have Andrea Wallace and Tori Short have been putting together some very important things about how to make, not just for our teachers of the visually impaired, but for all teachers, general education teachers, teachers of all types, to make materials for our students in general education classes accessible to them. So we're talking Word documents, PowerPoints, just all the things that they need to be learning to create those things from inception in an accessible format. And so this is a Canvas course that will be self-paced that teachers across Florida can enroll in and partake of and learn how to make things accessible. And so this is the kickoff to that Canvas course. And we're very, very, very excited for that because it's, an expectation that all things can be accessible for all people and all students. So we're excited for that kickoff on January 13th, a webinar. Then in February, we'll have a 3-part series for, we've talked a lot about assessment for students with visual impairments. And so this 3-part series is what happens after assessment? How do we continue to provide quality services for our students with visual impairments? This 3-part series is going to focus on writing really great goals so that we can take good data and ensure that students continue to make progress on the things that we've identified in those really quality assessments. And so we'll talk about goal writing, lesson planning, unit planning, data collection, so that when we get to those 3-year evaluation periods, that we have such great data and we've really looked at making progress, and we can make really, really good decisions at that time about what additional data we might need. And so we just want to follow it all the way through. So that's what that series will be about. It's also time for us to start registering for the Florida Regional Braille Challenge. And as a reminder, we'll have only one event this year. It's going to be a wonderful event for all students in Florida to attend, and it will be located in Tampa on February 13th. So that registration is open, and we sent out a reminder email today. So don't forget to register. All students, we're trying to gather everybody to Tampa this year, February 13th. We will have our third virtual vision contacts meeting. So all of our district vision program contacts, that next meeting is going to be February 19th. Our fourth meeting is going to be an in-person meeting, and it's going to attach to our working with the experts in April. And so that in-person vision contacts meeting in April is going to be an opportunity for us to look at some data and to do some size-like conversations for district vision contacts in Tampa. Working with the experts is really exciting this year. So that's our in-person 2-day workshop. And this is with a guest speaker, Sarah Larkin. She is a math expert for students with vision impairments out of Iowa. And she is going to do some serious math accessibility strategies, hands-on, even get into a little bit of like how to handle digital math. So 2 days of math strategies with Sarah Larkin. So we're really excited about that. She's been really planning some awesome activities for us, just specific to us too in Florida. So we're really excited about that. And then this is just a list of some of our trainings like that we've already done this year. There's been a lot happening. So if you've been busy, I can't imagine that that's been happening, that you've been busy, but we've recorded them all for you so you can still partake in all the fun. So check out our past events webpage and see some of these recorded webinars. They're there for you. Thank you, Sherry, for posting that link. I think that's it.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah, for now, yeah. So I do want to remind for the Braille Challenge, so we sent that out today, that so you
Yeah.
have your student registration forms, that's a form, but then everybody else needs to register
Yes,
to
please.
attend the event. Okay, so students register on a form that's separate, like a permission form kind of thing, and then we just have our event registration that everybody, any person who is coming needs to
Yes,
fill that.
any
Yeah,
human you are bringing.
yes, and no matter how little or how old or yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that wraps us up. So we have on this slide our evaluation for this session. Please take the time to fill that out so we can see your feedback and incorporate that into future events and trainings. And then we have our in-service credit form here. Your closing code is student.
No,
Oh,
I changed it because we had a duplicate. It's register.
oh.
Code is register.
Oh, register. I thought I
Sorry.
had that at the beginning code. I'm sorry, y'all. So, okay.
We did a little flip-flopping. So
Okay.
opening code student, closing code register.
There we go. Thank you. All right. Closing code, yeah. So when you fill out that in-service credit form, you're going to receive a certificate via email, which you have to then provide to the district or the state in order, and it has to be approved for you to receive credit. And I just put the upcoming events link on this page just as a reminder that these, in case you can't get to these today, these same forms live on our upcoming events page, and they're also on our past events page and on our form page. We try to put them everywhere to make sure people can find them when they need those, but they are also in the chat. And this is how you can reach us. So any questions that come up about this or anything else related to what we do, you can contact me, E. Anderson at FIMC-VI.org, or Tiffany, and our address if you are sending things to us. And hopefully you did get that email today about Braille Challenge, and you're getting some more emails, our newsletters, because we send things out pretty regularly, although we try to not totally overwhelm your mailboxes because we know you'll probably get a lot of email. But if you're not receiving those things, make sure you sign up for that, because we really do try to make sure that we communicate things as they come up, keep everyone up to date, especially with our changes to the portal that are coming, to make sure that you all know. And I will say, so the APH Loan Library Braillers, our current goal is December 15th. So I will say that, so you just have that in your mind, that like December 15th is like a tentative, sort of solidly tentative date for that. But we will be communicating that via an email and updating our banner on our website, which you have our link there, our YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed and all that to YouTube, that is where you could see that, oh, FIMT uploaded another recording of a webinar. So you have that as well. And Andrea just put in the chat, oh, she put the link to the some more of the Braille Challenge email. So that is there for you to review, and make sure you, yeah, get those students signed up. We want this to be a big party. People to come from here, there, and everywhere. And that's it. I'm gonna stop the recording.